If you were to tell a story about that girl, what kind of story would you tell? I think most of us would assume she's a drug addict, and our story might revolve around a wild child and maybe take place in the worst neighborhood of a really big city. And that is so human. When we're faced with an unpleasant topic, we naturally want to distance ourselves, so that couldn't happen to us, or to anyone we know, or even in our zip code. I think this girl's true story might surprise you. At the beginning of last year, she was a straight-A student in a private school in a small town not far from here. By the middle of last year, she was another young human trafficking victim, being sold for sex by a trafficker who pocketed all the money and sometimes gave her drugs to keep her compliant. I really can't think of much that's more dehumanizing than buying and selling a person. Welcome to my world. I work with human trafficking survivors along with a great team at an agency I founded. A little background, human trafficking is a criminal activity that moves people from freedom to slavery through violence, lies, manipulation, and threats, often for the sale of sex. And this number 2 and fastest growing crime on the planet is happening here in our communities in every zip code. So when we first started working, we found that even though we were connecting survivors to the maze of services they needed, many of them were returning to their exploiters. That was a bit baffling until I heard more and more survivor stories, and it started to make sense. Because human traffickers are master manipulators. They prey on a young person's unmet emotional needs, most often the universal desire for love, acceptance, and a place of belonging. And most often, kids who've already been abused or traumatized. So the trafficker enters like this magic genie who appears to provide everything that child wishes for. Too often, hurting kids latch on to the first thing that feels good, and then down the rabbit hole they go, hidden and unhelped, and before long, likely dead, because the average life expectancy of a child once trafficked is 7 years. And I do mean child, because the average age of entry into trafficking is between 12 and 14 for a girl, 11 and 13 for a boy. You know, when you're 13, you need somebody to take care of you, physically and emotionally. We have 94 minors trafficked for sex in our state of Tennessee every month. That's a statistic. It's easy to be overwhelmed or numbed by statistics until you meet the person behind the statistic. 15-year-old Emily met her new boyfriend at the library where she liked to go after school. Ben started walking her home, made her feel special. He sold her a dream of love, marriage, a home, someday kids. And then Ben took Emily to a party where he slipped something into her juice, and she woke up to a nightmare in progress, a room full of men raping her. And having reeled Emily in through that human connection, Ben then sold her to a guy in a gang who terrorized her and kept selling her many times every day. Notice what Ben did. He really listened to Emily. He took stock of her greatest needs, and he knew what to promise her. That's what traffickers do. So after he had flawlessly executed his duties, Ben moved on to his next prey. Eventually, law enforcement intervened and referred Emily to our nonprofit for care. So now Emily is physically free. But her real journey to freedom is just beginning. When a girl like Emily is first released, her needs are mind-boggling. Safety, housing, medical care, food, clothing, therapy, the list goes on and on. But that is the relatively easy part. Healing may never come. In fact, a victim may never seek or accept services without the human touch. So how do we overcome dehumanizing? The only way is through rehumanizing. What does rehumanizing look like? Well, for one thing, like in any relationship, it takes authenticity. Trafficked persons usually learn to read people with laser-like accuracy. It's the only way they could survive. They can tell if someone is just doing the job for the paycheck, and they can tell if someone is present, real, connected. It also takes time and lots of it. We all want to hear about a survivor who quickly turns her life around and becomes a shining inspiration to others. That unfair expectation itself can be a great burden. Emily's life as a victim was tightly controlled, down to what she would wear, when she would eat, sleep, even go to the bathroom. After an experience like that, no one wants to be treated by some cookie-cutter agency as just another number in a long line. So we can offer Emily's advice, counsel, options, but ultimately it's her life and her choices, and she has to have the freedom, like all of us, to mess up. And even as they receive help, survivors like Emily learn how much they have to give. I mean, who likes to just be a duty or always on the receiving side? If you've ever been in that place, maybe you lost your job or you had an extended illness, you were grateful for the help, but it eroded your self-worth at the same time. We all need to find our ways to contribute. So one girl bakes cupcakes for the other survivors' birthdays, and another tutors recovering women in math. The first girl I ever worked with is now with Homeland Security, training police how to work with human trafficking victims. No human is complete without something worthwhile to offer. So last December, Emily volunteered to decorate the offices for the holidays, and I put aside my work of running the agency to spend some time with her. We knew each other really well by now, so we started cracking jokes and ribbing each other unmercifully, which was something I knew she received as affection. When out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of a new referral, Rosie, watching us intently. It wasn't hard to read her face. This is not what she expected in a social service agency. She was used to a clinical atmosphere with lots of forms to fill out and a polished professional on the other side of the desk. Before long, Rosie's guard came down and we were all wisecracking and decorating and sharing holiday stories, the good, the bad, and the crazy. And we found we had a lot in common. But you know, many people who entered the office right then would have been thinking, don't they do any work around here? How unprofessional and ineffective. But I don't think so. Moments of human connection like that helped Rosie be willing to open up, to share her story and begin the healing process together. On a sadder note, just a couple of weeks ago when most of us were holed up in our houses because of the winter weather, another one of the girls we work with, Shannon, was found face down in the snow, dead from an apparent overdose. We're all devastated. And before long, we'll be filling out outcomes reports for our funders, and Shannon will just be another number in the failures column. But we filled her last weeks with love, with support from people who understood her struggles. We're there now to comfort her mother. We can't control all the outcomes, but surely human kindness is worth something. Okay, I know that many of us rush through life harried and hurried, but if you knew someone nearby was at risk of harm and you could do something about it, of course you would. You have good hearts. Well, someone is, and you can. Our world is full of people longing for a community of support, for that love, belonging, and acceptance. And without them, young people especially are vulnerable to all kinds of exploitation. They're more likely to run away. Did you know that 1/3 of all runaways is approached by a trafficker within 48 hours of leaving home? And 90% end up trafficked. I never meet a survivor for the first time without being aware of how easily it could have been me on the other side of that table. Statistically, 1 in 10 of you were abused by the age of 18, 1 in 7 for the women. And I am one of them, abused by my charming pastor father from the age of 11 until I left home at 16. And then I was ripe for the picking by an exploiter. Just a couple of people took an interest. They listened, they loved me when I didn't love myself. They saw potential, and that made all the difference. I went on to college, married a fine man, and never fell victim to further exploitation. You have young people in your life, whether through family, volunteer work, or your profession. However you interact with young people, please notice especially the messy ones, the ones who don't make eye contact, the ones who are always looking for attention, the ones who erupt into angry outbursts, lie, manipulate, give you attitude. Those are the ones who are silently crying out for someone to give a damn, someone to see them, to hear them, to understand. The 14th Dalai Lama, in his piece, Paradox of Our Age, said, "We've been all the way to the moon and back and have trouble crossing the street to meet the new neighbor. We build more computers to hold more information, to produce more copies than ever, and have less communication. We're long on quantity and short on quality. These are times of steep profits and shallow relationships. It's a time when there's much in the window, but nothing in the room." When we embrace the importance of being human in all our encounters, we take a stand against the dehumanized world. We make harder the job of exploiter. We make easier the job of restoration. We become a stronger and more civil society when we design the human touch into our systems and into our expectations. Thank you.